deeper self, how are they connecting? And at some point we have Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are here in training 4, and this is a big one. This is where we really start to focus on integration because up until now, we have been really working on what are the layers of the inner body, the mind, the body, mind, the deeper self, how are they connecting? And at some point, we have to go from just working on our inner self to also bringing that out into the world. So before we start, as always, let's just do a little centering together because our really goal is to not just take this in intellectually, but also really to be connected, heart to pelvis, pelvis to heart, to really get the depth of it. So just for a moment, you might even be getting quicker and quicker at this as we go along. You can just take a deep breath. You might even want to raise your shoulders up as you take a deep breath. And then as you exhale, the ha sound, just letting it all flow right out. And bring the mind down through your awareness, coming through the throat, down into the pelvic bowl. And as you do this, and just notice that you're aware of any areas of tension in the body, and use your awareness and the imagination of sort of breathing right into those so that as you breathe in, you can notice them. And as you exhale, it can just flow right out. And in today's centering, not only do I want you to notice the area of the pelvis and feeling grounded with your feet on the floor, I want you to notice the pelvis connecting through the central channel to the heart, heart to pelvis, pelvis to heart. And then for a moment, I want you to just imagine your bubble as if you have a bubble of space that extends out just past around where your hands would be if you were to extend your hands out to the side. Notice that you are in this sphere and just have some gratitude for this amount of space that is your space. And so bring your awareness to the edge of that bubble, out in front, to the side, above your head, to the left side, even out behind you, noticing that it also extends out that way. And you're just noticing, you can even ask the phrase out loud so that your brain and your protector system and all parts of yourself can hear. You can just sort of ask the question, what would it feel like to really take up my space? And just notice what happens on the inside when your body hears you say those things. What would it feel like to really take up my space? And just kind of notice what happens on the inside, not taking it as good or bad, but just being aware. And then setting an intention like a strong thought laser beam from the heart that I want to receive everything I need from this time. Please help me in a way that I can understand. It's always a good clarifying laser beam request. So just noticing that, noticing the heart to pelvis, pelvis to heart connection, your intention to receive whatever is really for you in this moment. And then also being aware of your entire space bubble. I have so much gratitude for you that you are here in this moment. Thank you, thank you, thank you for this learning together. And as you stay aware of that inner world, coming back, gently opening the eyes, rub the hands together if you like, giving yourself a little chi bath, tapping down the front, sides, arms, legs, tops of the feet, and the back, coming into this time and place. So what we're talking about in this training, like I said, is really an integration, because here's one of the tricky things about healing. Sometimes when we go deep into one of these areas, our protector system kind of makes it so that as a coping mechanism, we over focus on one to neglect the other. In sort of spiritually new agey circles, you often hear this called spiritual bypassing. It's this thing where, spiritual bypassing is a protector system move, and it's a real sneaky one because on the surface, and I've been guilty of this myself. I was a new acupuncturist and I was helping people, in my 20s and late 20s, early 30s. And I sort of, was insecure and afraid that people were going to find out my protector system stuff down in the basement was like, well, I hope they don't feel like if they find out that I'm an imposter, or I don't know enough, or all of these things that protector systems do. And so, sometimes that can lead to this, like, it's all good. I'm totally fine. I'm a practitioner. I help other people. Oh yeah, I know this stuff. I just need a little stuff. So, what I've sort of become as well as being obsessed with results, I'm also a little bit obsessed with integration, of really knowing that the path of the heart is one where we must go through and relinquish all of these things to really be integrated: heart to pelvis, pelvis to heart, heart to the center of the head, inner world to outer world. And that's where we are landing today, friends, because this that we're going to talk about in this lesson is one of the number one things where I see people really get tripped up. Maybe you have done a little bit of inner work, but if you don't know the energetics of bringing it from your field out into the world and what happens when other people's fields are coming at you, this is the place that we kind of re-traumatize ourselves and really keep ourselves stuck and drained. So buckle up, get your notebooks. What we're going to talk about today is really how to deal with the energy of other people. Now, this is going to be different because tomorrow we're in training number 5. We're going to talk about not just generational trauma, so other energy fields that we are in, like our family lineage and romantic bubbles that we are in, and also how to get rid of energy that's not yours. This is the particular type of how we are taking on or meshing our bubbles with other people in ways that tends to go wrong, especially for people who are sensitive, empathic, HSPs, because the truth is that we are wounded by other people. We are wounded in relationship. And so a deep wiring understanding of the knowledge of how energetic fields work in relationship on a mind, body, subtle body level, not just energy work, is very important for integration. And the number one way where I see people really, this is, if you can get this, really tells me you're on the path to self-mastery, because I have met so many people in the acupuncture, yoga, qigong, self-help, healing, teaching, guru, blah, 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 blah. And so many people say one thing, but can't really show up to actually do it and be it. And, I'll sometimes say, I've met really, really holy people and jerks from every tradition. So this integration is really the key to how do we take what we know and really live it. Now, and when I talk about other people's energy, I'm not just talking about what we talk about in the energy work realm of like shielding. People often say like, well, I got to put up my protection and I'm in a bubble of blue light, and all of these things are good and they have an effect in the energy realm, but we're actually getting even deeper of really how does the wiring work, not just for your energy and what you do, your energetic field, because remember, your energetic field is generated from that body mind level. And there's a lot of stuff in that level. You've got the protector system, you've got your body meanings of things. So energy work is powerful and good, but I'll often hear people say like, "Whoo, I try to do shielding and other stuff, but it just doesn't seem to work." So, bold statement: anytime you are really so overwhelmed by feeling other people's feelings, or you just can't help but feel what other people are feeling, that is not just a natural characteristic of being an empath. It is a sign of some subtle body dysfunction. Said another way, it is possible to use your empath ninja superpowers and also not be overwhelmed and not take on other people's energy. So if you have been telling yourself that mind story, it's maybe time to let that one go, because it's natural that we feel that way. But I want you to hear that I have seen it over and over again in myself and lots of other people that I work with as clients, that it is possible to keep the sensitive part but not take on other people's energy. That's a sign that there's something wrong with your body mind wiring that needs updated and changed, which is very possible. So let us dive right in. Do, 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 do. Okay. So, what we've been talking about before, last time we were going deep into these levels of the mind, body, mind, and heart. And now in training 4, we're going to talk about energetic communication and the 50% line. So, essentially, where we have to start is that here's us. This is our individual mind system, body mind system, and heart deep soul system. And obviously, they don't exist as 3 separate pillars. They're all intertwined and interconnected, and there's all these connections between them. But we're using this as a way to, really show how things are connected. And here is another person's mind system, body mind system, and heart system. And anytime you have, 2 people working together, there's going to be sort of an exchange or meeting of these energies in between 2 people. Now, some people say, why doesn't the heart have one? The heart and the soul, as I've said before in training 1, those exist by heart operates on different rules. So it is all places at all times and doesn't have quite the same sort of thing that we have to worry about here. So we're going to focus in terms of communication and this integration on the body, mind, and the mind. So anytime that things are happening between you and another person, there's going to be an exchange. The problem is that what often happens is that we are not totally, that we've got some wiring things that are crossed in the mind body area and the mind. And what that can sometimes look like is imbalances that start to come up. So, for example, sometimes we are too far into somebody else's space, which is going to end up feeling too much of their feelings or taking on too much of their things in the system, or giving away too much of our inherent vital energy because we're in some sort of pattern. Alternatively, sometimes we're not even taking up enough of our space and we sort of invite in other people's energy too much as well, which creates very similar problems. So it's not a one for one, like when this is happening, you always feel like this, but it's a general rule of how that happens. Now, remember that this mind body level and the mind level are interconnected. They are working back and forth and connected with each other. So sometimes you can have in the mind level, and here we're talking about the things that we say and the habits and the way that we communicate on a surface level. Sometimes you can also be too far over your line or too far back on your line, and that will cause issues not just in the mind level, but also in the mind body level. So, what I want you to hear is, in a way, it often tends to go that these guys are sort of like a team, so that whatever is happening in one level is going to be affected by the other. So I just showed you each of those individually, but it tends to kind of have, a little bit of a similar type of pattern, because what we're doing in our mind system, what we're doing in our body mind system is going to heavily affect those other 2. And this is also why it's so important to focus on this area of how we're interfacing, because it does have such a broad effect. And I've seen that most people who are coming to me for help need to not only ultimately shore up their subtle body aspects. Subtle body is both of these. So not only their body mind aspects of how they manage their chi and their energy and what's happening when a chi vampire is trying to, narcissistic sort of chi vampire people are trying to get up in your field, but also doing different patterns with the mind and with your speech communication. Now, there are techniques out there like nonviolent communication, which I like and I've studied. And but those things focus mostly on here's what you do in this mind level. Here's what you say. Here's the words. Just practice saying, when you did that, I feel like this. I'm wondering if you'd be willing. And so those things are good. And I encourage people to do things like conflict communication. But if we only change the words on the surface and we don't deal with the body mind underneath, you can probably tell that you're going to have problems. And you've probably maybe been guilty of this yourself or heard someone else where like they said it or I told the kids to stop doing that, but they just ignored me. Well, it's probably because your chi and other things weren't there as well. So we actually have a natural human sense of knowing when we are not in alignment, and we feel it from other people, whether or not we know that that's happening. The other thing that maybe you don't want to hear, so brace yourselves, is that often empaths and sensitive people, and when we're working out our subtle body stuff, we have often this mind lie that says, well, people don't know what's going on with me. I hide it from them. I got to tell you, you're probably not kidding anyone. People can feel, even when they're not aware of it, what is going on at this body mind level, even if they don't have words to it. So this is why it's really important, because your ability to really lead yourself and lead others and really have deep healing presence for yourself, deep connection if you're working with clients, and deep, love and relationships with intimate people in your life. Like and I've studied, and but those things focus mostly on here's what you do in this mind level. Here's what you say, here's the words. Just practice saying, when you did that, I feel like this. I'm wondering if you'd be willing. And so those things are good, and I encourage people to do things like conflict communication. But if we only change the words on the surface and we don't deal with the body mind underneath, you can probably tell that you're going to have problems. And you've probably maybe been guilty of this yourself or heard someone else where like they said it or I told the kids to stop doing that, but they just ignored me. Well, it's probably because your chi and other things weren't there as well. So we actually have a natural human sense of knowing when we are not in alignment, and we feel it from other people, whether or not we know that that's happening. The other thing that maybe you don't want to hear, so brace yourselves, is that often empaths and sensitive people, and when we're working out our subtle body stuff, we have often this mind lie that says, well, people don't know what's going on with me. I hide it from them. I got to tell you, you're probably not kidding anyone. People can feel, even when they're not aware of it, what is going on at this body mind level, even if they don't have words to it. So this is why it's really important, because your ability to really lead yourself and lead others and really have deep healing presence for yourself, deep connection if you're working with clients, and deep, love and relationships with intimate people in your life, friends and family members and partners, is contingent on both of these things going together. So what I really want you to dive deep in with me today is one of the most important tools for this area, which we call dun, 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 the 50% line. So the 50% line, I first learned about this as an energy medicine concept from a teacher, Mark Dunn, who I really respect. And he sort of taught on the energy medicine level, and I've sort of taken and expanded it into these subtle body areas. So the 50% line essentially is how we hold the energetic subtle body barrier between our subtle body and someone else's. And it's a little complicated, so we're going to break it down into several areas. And this is super important because the number one sign that we have something going on, something a little bit off with the 50% line, is feeling a sense of resentment. Now, there's other things. There can be a lot of things that show us that there's 50% line things off. It could be feeling drained, like I talked about, taking on other people's energy. Anytime there's a mishmash with our us going over the line, or us being too far back and other people coming over the line, these are 50% issues. So any of the things that I've named, but sometimes even if you can't identify those, you will be able to identify a feeling in yourself of resentment. And anytime there is resentment, it's usually a big red flag that there has been some shifting of the 50% line that needs to be justified, adjusted. So we're aware of this idea of physical space. And most people, can really get it when we talk about this way. Sometimes, in different cultures, I'm a language nerd, so I've lived and studied in a lot of different cultures and different languages. And you start to notice that people's comfort level of physical space is a little bit different in Europe than it is in Japan. And so we kind of understand this, like how close we are, or that can also be in other people's spaces. Now, what you might not have thought of is how are you doing on your 50% line energetically? So, this can be usually for sensitive people, it's not taking up enough space. That's why at the beginning of this exercise and grounding, we did the sort of like, what would it be like to take up my space? So I feel curious, did your, protector system get a little triggered with that? Was there a good feeling? Was there sort of a scary feeling? So you can sort of start to see, where is my mind body system and my protector system comfortable with actually taking up the space that's mine? Because there can often be things in the basement attached to that. So not taking up enough space, trying to be small or invisible energetically. And I am super guilty of this one. I am a tall lady. I am 6'2", and I've been the tallest kid in school since I was in fifth grade. And so, from that or some other reason, I think I developed really a tendency, probably because of my sensitivity and some issues with my subtle body, of feeling other people's energy quite strongly when I was younger, to just sort of like pretend that I was a little bit smaller energetically. Even though I might have been standing up straight, I had a tall mom, so I wasn't someone that slouched a lot. But I got called out on this once in an energy medicine seminar. We were all, the whole group, there's probably like 100 people in the room. And the teacher, who I didn't really know personally at that time, we all had our eyes closed. And at the end of the exercise, he said, "You and the pink scarf." I was wearing a scarf. He said, he was talking about this very thing, taking up enough space or not. He said, "You and the pink scarf, why don't you, how come you're wearing a cloaking device?" And he made me ask me to come up to the front of the room. And he said, "Okay, now I want you to actually let your field get as big as it is." And, I got feedback from the people who were there and other things. And it was a very interesting experience. And I could see for myself that I, without even noticing it, was trying to be very small. So energetically, 50% line, sometimes, especially if you've done energy work or other things, you might be sort of doing weird stuff with your chi field because you're compensating for some subtle body wiring that needs fixed. So we need to get down to the technical side of what's there so that you can really fill up the channels. I want you to hear that on the technical side, even in Chinese medicine, so I want to give you a counterbalance for the thing that sometimes comes up in our mind that says, "Ooh, I have to put up a strong boundary, or I have to make a bubble, or I have to have an energetic barrier," type of thing. That has some truth to it, but the deeper wiring of how the chi and prana level really work is that actually the real sustainable solution is to have well-connected wiring, obviously mind, body, mind system, chi and meridians, that those are so filled up that they actually fill up and will naturally have a sort of pushing out, taking up space effect. You can maybe even feel in your body how that feels when your body just hears me say, like, what would it be like for the channels to be so full that there's actually no space for anybody else's crap to even come over your 50% line? That's what we're really talking about. And I want you to get the energetic signature of that, because that's really what we're heading for. And if you feel like you're constantly having to get rid of energy that's not yours, which we're going to talk about tomorrow, or take up more space, it's generally because we need to fix how all of the mind patterns are fitting in with the body mind patterns so that there's just no question of anything coming in. This is a solution if you feel like you're constantly attracting narcissists or takers. It's generally because you are not on some level, consciously or unconsciously, taking up enough space. So some of the things you also might notice are this sort of phenomena of sort of trauma bonding where you're just drawn to someone, or there's just this certain charge that your system, because of the protector system, because of the patterns in the basement, is being drawn to people where it creates this charge, but it's really a mismatch of the 50% line. We already talked about if you feel overwhelmed by other people's energy, if you are unable to self-regulate around other people, if you feel like, yeah, I'm okay by myself, or you find yourself really isolating from others because it just seems too hard or too exhausting to just be yourself around other people. Obviously, if you're a sensitive person, you're not going to feel comfortable like going out to loud bars with tons of people in them. But if it's so overwhelming to just be around other people and still regulate yourself, that's something that's very fixable on the subtle body level. And to a certain extent, if you can't tolerate conflict, this is also something in the body, mind, and also the mind level that needs to be shored up. So I want you to be able to recognize these signals, because this can be a tricky thing. And we want to have real laser beam clarity of what level we're working on and where we need to rectify our 50%. So, the biggest, trickiest part that I want you to have awareness about in this training about the 50% line is what happens on the mental, emotional level. Because if you're aware of energy, you sometimes can tell whether you're sort of leaning over your line a little bit too much or if other people are coming over, because you have a felt sense. However, sneaky 50% line stuff will often show up in the emotional mental realm, in the mind column of our diagram that we've been working with. And remember, I said emotions are the part of, have meaning and are a mind level thing for the most part. There are feelings. I'm sorry, this should be feelings and mental realm, because the emotions is, we use them differently and interchangeably. But we're talking about this feeling mental level where we have put some meaning onto what's actually happening in the mind level. This is a big one that I want you to come away from and tell me your takeaway of what you've noticed, especially if you've got some 50% line stuff going on in this area. And the first thing is taking mental responsibility for others. Now, this is a tricky one because sometimes we are not even aware that we're doing it. But anytime you feel guilty or you're trying to prevent someone on some level from feeling a certain way, or you feel bad that somebody else feels bad, these are 50% line issues that must be caught and dealt with. Because it's sneaky, because culturally, and especially with women, we get programming that it's our job to actually worry for other people. It's our job to make sure that nobody has any bad feelings, even if it's on their 50% and they actually should feel bad in this moment because they really screwed up. So this takes a little bit of really laser beam integration to catch yourself. Am I feeling responsible for how someone else is feeling? Am I feeling responsible for the natural consequences that someone else has experienced by their own actions, thoughts, and deeds? This is a big question to answer. So, anytime you're feeling guilty, you're feeling bad that someone feels a certain way, and it really had nothing to do with you outside of, if you went and punched someone in the face, you should feel some responsibility for that. But most of the time, we are not actors in the situation, and we are also taking on that responsibility, at least in our mind or potentially down in the basement. But that you got to be able to see where it starts in the mind. Any form of codependence generally has mind and also body mind. There could be both levels that are contributing to that. Anytime we're doing people pleasing, anytime we're saying yes when we really mean, hell no, I don't want to do that. Hey, can you help with this? Oh, sure. No, I don't want to fucking help with that. I'm so tired and I can't even help myself. And now I'm going to go over and help you. So anytime we're saying yes when we really mean no is a big red flag for 50% line issues. Our motto in the Body Wisdom Academy is a yes to someone else that's a no to me means everybody loses. A yes to someone else that's a no to me means everybody loses. So we got to bust up these mind lies that are really messing with our subtle body function. inability to say no, not communicating your needs. This is a big one and a big part of why we get resentful. Sometimes we have a mind lie or a mind storm that says, if I just keep over giving to others, at some point I'm going to be recognized. But we're leaving out the point of the subtle body dysfunction that says, I need to clearly communicate my needs in an energetic way. And we're going to talk about this a little bit tomorrow and kind of plant the seed for how this works in relationships as well, and the what we call the yin yang communication cycle of intimate partner communication, where you can actually start to, when you understand the energy, really inspire others to really step up and meet your needs in ways that are pretty freaking glorious. Another thing I want to bring your attention to here is this inability to be vulnerable. This was a big one for me. And this shows up in the feeling mental realm as well as sometimes a little bit of the energetic realm. But, I used to think like, oh, it's not that I'm withholding how I'm actually feeling or what I'm struggling with. I'm just choosing not to share. What it really was an inability to be vulnerable because of subtle body stuff tracing down to the basement. So it's really important to catch ourselves. You can ask yourself questions like, can I feel comfortable admitting when I don't have the answer? Do I feel comfortable? Do I default to trying to be the expert or to know as a way to stay safe? Is my protector system using my knowledge or knowing or understanding something or being okay or having it all together as a protector system coping mechanism? So the 50% line between us and other people is one of the ways that we drain out and sabotage our subtle body success, because you can do all the inner work all day, but we don't live in a vacuum and we are wounded in groups. And so we must learn how to be who we actually are and be ourselves, and to actually take up as much space in our field, not just energetically, but also in the feeling and the mental state, and catch ourselves running old mind lie definitions that are not only affecting our mind level, but are tracing down and creating and making subtle body patterns worse as a whole, because they are landed and sourced in the basement as well. So what I want you to identify is, what is one place that from watching this and thinking of it, there's a place that you didn't know about that you really are needing to adjust your 50% line. Could be where you don't take up enough space and other people are coming over to your 50% line, or a place where you are not coming up to your own 50% line enough. Both of these have everything to do with your 50%, and learning how to identify that is key for integration of really maintaining your bubble, not draining out your chi, and becoming the energetic ninja powerhouse that you are. Awesome. I would like to know, what is that one area that you surprisingly are starting to uncover might have a 50% issue? Go ahead and comment below this video. I'm always looking and responding to all of the comments and seeing who the shares and what your takeaways are. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'm so glad you're here. Stay tuned for video 5, where we're going to go into generational trauma. How does this fit in with kids? You'll see right here, there is some parts of the 50% line that really get triggered when parents are thinking about their kids. We're going to talk about those in training 5 with generational trauma, so they can really shore up your family systems and the 50% there, as well as how does this work in relationship in terms of the dynamic of energetic communication, which we call yin yang communication. And how is it that I just, can get rid of energy that's not mine? And what's really happening there if I really am taking on stuff that's not a 50% line issue, but is actually other people's energy that's not mine? I will see you in the next training.